There was no water at the well. Dropping pepper in it. So,
Good evening. Nice to have you.
and the gardens are coming. Weedy every day. Wow.
So feel free just to kind of through whatever you want to look at. Because I'm going to be abstaining from this stuff anyway, like the minutes and stuff. So, right. But
I'm happy to master.
I'm not. I'm halfway. I'm good.
Well, I'm old enough to remember polio. And that wasn't polio. That was
shot 6 years old. You've been in there all
I wish you well. I mean, 99.5% of fatalities in the last month across the United States have been undone. It's just a fact. Yeah.
I'd rather go on my choice.
Okay. And you have that right to choose. It's fine. I'm just saying.
It's all good.
Thomas, come hither.
No, I had no idea.
There you go, sir.
So where are you at? What are you going to do?
No. We haven't started.
I'm smiling.
When did you get one of the see-through ones?
It's a small one,
Well, is that true?
but without that big of a cube.
If you walk right by the father house, it looks like
There you go.
Well,
Last time I checked, it was an animal about this tall,
But at
very
least,
hairy.
at least in your case, nobody died. So you gotta thank God for that. They don't always end that way.
Paper.
and you, son?
Watching the Delta virus spread across. It is most interesting. We just, Stratford County just became moderate as of tonight.
Oh, they got it.
So now we've got Rockingham, Stratford, Belknap, and Merrimack. Yeah. The state 7-day average just went from 55 2 days ago to 68. And the thing is that they now released the vaccination data for towns. Northwood is one of the lower ones. It's 51.1%.
Yeah, I was really surprised at that one.
I thought we were smarter than, but, you know.
So did I.
Well, also, don't forget, I mean, that's total population, so it includes those that can't, like kids under 12.
Yeah, but there aren't.
But there aren't as many of those anyway.
I don't think there's a large population in comparison to kids under 12. Not with the school counts going down. So we handed out some extra stuff.
lucky us.
This is regarding the going virtual, or doing virtual presentations. Let's just start procedures, got the audit letter, and the new glossary of terms, which is going to put together when we met with
I
them.
read that and, yep. I mean, we don't want to not spend any time on that, but
No, basically, just,
thanks to our finance secretary.
No, that's fine. Okay.
Michael, hello.
I'm sure you're fine right
Is that Mike's name right there? Oh, okay, all right.
Need more tables.
No, this is all that's happening. Dan may be able to. Right. So, he's going to be over there when he comes. So for the time being.
So I was reading through the procedures. And if I'm not mistaken, Heather, who shall not be named, she who should not be named, gave Linda a new title. So we may need to change that to reflect that it is a land use something or
No,
other.
it's been changed then.
Okay. He's back to being, congratulations. We've done it? For what?
You're now board administrator, correct?
Part of me wants to
You're
stop
now
by
back to
and
being
sleep.
board administrator?
No.
That's an
Looked
old,
like they did a
that's,
good job.
read the date on it.
I didn't watch the
So,
She thought you were
I
done.
thought it had gone back.
No, I have to talk to the gentleman up on the top there.
No, wait,
Actually, the gentleman to the other side. Another
The
time.
bungalows up there, so then I
No, it
came back
hasn't changed.
But let me ask you
30-ish
this.
and they
I
were,
think we need to change the reference
Right,
to see, you really need to change that
3:30.
to reflect
Around
the,
over to make sure everything's cleaned up.
well, yeah.
he's aware of the situation. Pretty good.
Yeah, hopefully another thing on this and things.
Ginger? Ginger?
We'll do it later.
Ginger?
Are we ready to?
I just got a whole box of new cards, so forget it.
Good, thank you.
Okay, well, then it's out of my hands.
After I give 1,000 of those out, then bring it back up.
So what is it?
Land use specialist?
Did you just change that?
I don't know where it is.
It's up over there.
Pointing over there. So that's good. So,
That on the
We
screen
going.
is the zone, not the large
I
screen.
think we're,
Especially the president and stuff.
let me know when. Yes, we'll share it. We'll share it.
Oh, you need it more.
Good?
I think I 600,000.
Okay. Folks, we'll call the Budget Committee meeting of July 29th to order at 7:04. With a roll call, please.
Tom Chase. Bob Young.
Mike Moore.
Betty Smith.
Mike Jobin.
Tim Janiver.
Walter,
Steve Robinson. Ted Wilkinson. Jim Gazowski.
And Ginger Dole. Excused this evening, Betsy Coburn, Brad Hall. Dan McNally was going to try to make it, but he wasn't sure. He may come in during the meeting. In the meantime, he's excused. Brian Winslow and Eric Buckman. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Linda.
Okay, so everybody should have a paper in front of them on 91A to meetings open to the public. This is not the complete statute. I have taken out the portions that you will be looking at tonight relative to allowing electronic communication. at your meeting, and the statute basically says that the public body, which this is, may choose to allow participation in the meeting other than by attendance in person, provided that there is a quorum in the room. So the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday voted to allow this. Susan, as well as Paul, who works in the office, have set up the Zoom so that if you approve it, we can allow people that are not in attendance tonight to be able to participate. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, or if you want to take a minute and just read through that sheet.
Was this for the public or just for the members of the committee? Or
Only
both?
members of the committee. Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
You have
I
a
have a
question?
question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ted?
Not so much a question, I'm prepared to make a motion to approve this. I think it's a fine idea for members of the committee only to participate electronically. So I'll state it more formally. I move that the Budget Committee approve participation in meetings henceforth by members electronically.
Do you have a motion?
Second.
That is seconded. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, has
Yes.
anyone tried out the audio on Zoom from this room? Because I can tell you from the State House that we tried this, and the people that were in committee, were in the committee rooms, the echo and the reverberation of nobody could hear anything. That was
There was
on the
a-
Zoom call. We actually ended up abandoning, during COVID, the committee rooms and going all 100% Zoom because nobody could hear anybody when the people here on Zoom couldn't hear you. So,
It is a requirement that you have to be able to hear. There was a trial run on Tuesday night, and it appeared to work fine. Susan's prepared to run that tonight. And again, you cannot do it unless you can hear back and forth.
So would it be fair to say that if the committee approves this tonight, we would see if any of those not here want to participate tonight and then do a sound check, basically?
Yes, we would proceed to allow them in via Zoom. I did send the Zoom information to all of the folks that are excused absent.
Okay.
Have you heard anything back?
I know that there is one, possibly two, that are interested, depending on their particular circumstances and why they're not here tonight.
Susan
It's
was,
not the position of the Budget Committee to, it's just a matter of whether or not you approve the electronic communication.
In which case, Susan would switch it on, and access to the meeting would become available to those budget committee.
that have that
members
Zoom
will-
info. Mm-hmm, that's correct.
And this would be for this meeting as well as meetings going forward.
Yes,
As long as there's a quorum.
as long as there's a
Yeah.
quorum in the room. It's not intended for, and I use a term that I heard was used at the selectmen's meeting, it's not to be able to stay at home and be comfortable in your jammies or whatever. It's,
Or because it's pouring rain out tonight and nobody
right,
wanted to
it's
get wet.
more, if you have particular circumstances that make it difficult for you to attend.
If it becomes that, it basically makes the committee non-functional. I mean, if people decide, everyone decides they want to stay home.
Then there wouldn't be a meeting because we wouldn't have a quorum.
Exactly, as I said, the committee becomes non-functional.
Right. Susan, was there anyone Tuesday evening that, oh, okay, those who were here for Tuesday evening, was there anyone who was participating at all? So we're not, it should work, but we don't really have any feedback as to whether it works.
Yeah, it's been tested.
Okay.
We believe that it's going to work. And one way to find out.
Well, that's true. Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none. Tom?
Aye.
Let's see, Dan. Mike Moore?
Yes.
I have to go down the list that I was using for my Zoom, so
I'll answer to my name.
thank you. Steve?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
No?
Ted?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
And I'm inclined to no. So the yeses have it.
There's two that haven't voted.
Who did I miss? Oh, Tim's not on my list yet, that's why. Tim, how do you vote?
Oh, I don't really care, so yes, I don't.
Yeah, just, you
Yes.
guys, we have to share them, that's all. And
Selectman Jim.
I don't have you on my list either. Selectman Jim.
I would say no.
Thank you, Linda, for catching that. So I have 8 yes, 4 no. So we have determined that we will, I don't know if allow is the
Then
word
again,
for it.
we have 11 present, don't we? 4, 6,
1. You're correct, 3 no's. Okay, so I'm just going to go home now. It's been a very long day. Okay, so Linda, what's your best?
At this point, we
Idea.
would open the meeting and allow those who have the Zoom information to come in. And we'll wait a moment for Susan to be able to do that. And then we'll go on to the business.
So the person has to identify themselves and then state the reason that
Yes.
Well, they're both here, no,
because
this
that
is
has to go in the
Chris's.
minutes.
Well, no, I think the,
And just so you're aware, with the live stream, there's a little bit of a minute or two lag. So if they were, if someone else was listening, and there is a possibility that someone else may come in.
Can you hear us?
Just two of the people that are excused said that they may come in late.
Okay. Okay.
So at that point, Susan can...
Betsy, can you hear us? Okay.
Okay.
So the two issues at hand are for the person to state their reason for not attending, and also if there is anyone in the room with them.
Okay. Did you hear that, Betsy?
No one in the room with me.
Okay.
And also, doesn't just speak to the
Okay.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, and because we have to state in the minutes the reason for anyone requesting to participate electronically. Your stated reason?
I was under the understanding that that did not need to be in the minutes.
No, for RSA it does. We've got a copy of the RSA here.
I have reasons I can't be there. And I was told it didn't need to be public.
Well, unfortunately, 92A2, Section 2A states that a member of the public body may participate in a meeting other than by attendance in person at the location of the meeting only when such attendance is not reasonably practical. Any reason that such attendance is not reasonably practical shall be stated in the minutes of the meeting.
Okay, so it's not reasonably practical for me to be there.
I defer to powers other than me if that's sufficient.
I believe it is. She stated
Okay.
it's not reasonably practical for her to
Okay.
attend.
And you have that for the minutes, Susan, correct? Okay. All right, so we're changing Betsy from excused to now present. And if anyone else, any of the others happen to join, we'll do the same thing with them. Linda, I give it back to you.
Okay, so the first item on the agenda is election of officers. So has been past practice with the Budget Committee. I will ask for nominations for chair.
I'd like to nominate Ginger Dole for chair.
Second that.
Are there any other nominations?
Just for chair?
Correct.
Okay.
Before I call for the vote, I will ask if Ms. Dole will accept if nominated.
Yes, I will accept it.
Okay, so we do have to do a roll call vote.
Do you need a sheet, Linda? I have extras.
The list here, right here. Mike Moore,
Yes.
Betty Smith,
Yes.
Michael Jobin,
Yes.
Tim Jandeber,
Yep.
Paul Tudor,
Yep.
Steve Robinson,
Yes.
Ed Wilkinson.
Yes.
Attorney Jim, Selectman, sorry. I just gave you
You've
the
been
title.
promoted.
Yes.
Selectman Jim,
Yes.
Ginger,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Bob Yarn.
Yes.
Vote is unanimous. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to get used to that. Betsy Colburn, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will now note that Ginger Dole is duly elected and return it back to her for the vice chair.
Okay. So, to follow in Linda's footsteps, do we have nominations for vice chair?
Nominate Tom Chase.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for Tom. Are there any other nominations? Speak now or forever hold. I'm practicing. Okay, seeing there are no other nominations, roll call. My order is different than hers. Betsy? Tom?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
See, I tried that too, but yours was better. Steve?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
Kim?
No.
Jim?
Yes.
And yes. So we are 11-1, and Tom is vice chair. Okay.
So Tom, you're in charge of vice.
Oh, yes. The vote for chair was 12-0 for myself. The vote for vice chair for Tom was 11-1. Okay. So, moving on, our minutes from April 21st.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Does anyone have any corrections, questions? Fortunately, I brought everything, but I forgot my town packet at home, so, but I didn't find anything myself, so. Tom?
I would only note that on, these pages aren't numbered, but Susan, towards the back of the minutes, there are a number of places where there are typos, where the word should be and not then, or something like that, but nothing substantive. And I'm sure you'll see them if you read through them.
Michael?
Well, I don't see my name on here, but I have notes that I took from that meeting, so I'm assuming I was present.
You were here. Your name's not listed as present?
You're under voting designation for, at the end, at the beginning of the town section.
Right.
So you are in there. Correct.
Yeah, so we, I'm sorry?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I see something, I joined the meeting late. Mike Moore joined the meeting at 7:52. Okay. I'm before my,
Okay. Well, because we've had a couple of flips before, so. Does anyone have anything else?
I'd just like
Yes,
to say
Mr. Kidd.
This is a really good, thorough, professional job keeping the minutes. Surely some of the conversational pieces that had been edited slightly just for brevity and the ease of reading, but I think it very clearly captures the essence of the conversations that we had and the points that were being made. So kudos to our minute taker.
Yes, she does do a good job.
Second.
Are there any other questions, corrections, notes on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, need to do a roll call to accept them. Betsy? Tom?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
Tim?
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Right. And Jim?
Abstain?
You're abstaining, and I am a yes. So the vote is 10 approvals, 0 with 2 abstentions. And now we shall move on to the school. So in your packets that you received, you actually got 2. The first packet,
Recording in progress.
the first packet you got had this small 8 by 10 expenditure report, which was difficult to read. But the other materials that came with that first packet, including the report from Brian, answers to questions, those kinds of things, those are all good. You should have gotten your second packet that actually had the expenditure report on the 11 by 17 sheet. And in future, I have been assured that the expenditure report will be printed on 11 by 17 going forward. So as you can see, Brian isn't here this evening. He did send an overview of where they were at. For the public, I do need to read this into the minutes. I'll read it in, and Susan will scan it and attach it to the end of the minute, our meeting minutes or whatever, so she doesn't have to retype all of this. Please accept my apologies as no board member is available to attend the Budget Committee meeting. As far as the SAU updates are concerned, SAU 44 has hired Nathaniel Byrne as superintendent. For those of you who aren't aware of who he is, he was I don't even know what the correct new term for it is, but basically he was handling special education, placements and reports and all of that. Stratford has withdrawn from SAU 44 as of July 1, 2021, and is now SAU 105. The town of Nottingham has voted to withdraw from SAU 44 effective July 1, 2022. We continue to use Glenn Waring as part-time business administrator through MRI. There has been additional movement of SAU employees as we have downsized to a two-district SAU and hired and promoted from within. The school board updates. Shane Wells has resigned from the board after being notified of a deployment to Kosovo. Stephanie Arroyo has resigned from the board after changes to her work schedule. So they are now down to a board of 3. The board's focus is on transitioning to a single district SAU into the fall opening. The board's goal for fall opening is for as quote-unquote normal of a school experience as is reasonably possible and continues to receive state guidance. The board is hearing fall opening plans from the administration team as well as public input. Northwood school updates. Students are currently attending extended school year and summer enrichment programs. The administrative team is filling open positions, and we anticipate being fully staffed for the fall. Regular summer maintenance is taking place. Additional facilities repairs this summer include concrete work, to sidewalks and steps, stucco repair, and painting to the outside of the building. Northwood has received ESSR 4 funding grant approval for $242,306.72, which expires in 2024. In addition to the other ESSR funds, the board's goals are to use the funding responsibly and timely while avoiding funding cliffs. The budget year is closed with an estimated surplus of $600,000. The board has voted to retain up to 3%. Funding amounts which were overdrawn by more than $1,000 have an explanation attached. So that's the overview that Brian sent to be read into the record. You did receive a new large sheet that shows those line items that were over more than $1,000 over the line item, the line amount to begin with. I guess at this point, we can go what we would typically do.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Please.
Your procedures state that you must receive the information 1 week prior to the meeting, and the material was not originally sent out in time for that. So the board would have to take a vote to set aside your procedures for any discussion on the information, as has been done in the past, if the committee decides to go forward with discussion.
Okay, well, I'd like to know when everybody received their first packet, because I got mine on Wednesday, the week, last Wednesday. So we had the materials, not legible because of the small print. I only bring it up because I got, like I said, mine came in the mail on Wednesday. Was everybody else's received on Wednesday, or was it later? I'm not talking about the expanded one.
I don't know.
I got mine.
I'd like
I got
to,
mine, I'm not worried about it.
I'd like to not proceed in that direction, but rather make a motion that we accept the materials we have in hand from the school board, regardless of whether they came on Wednesday or maybe Thursday, so that we don't. Is that okay, Linda?
That's for you to decide. You put
Oh,
the
yeah,
motion on
is
the
that-
floor,
is that
and then
mo-
you
is
can
that
set
motion in
aside
or-
your procedure for tonight.
Is that motion
That's
in
how
order?
it's typically been done.
So I'm making a motion that we accept the materials that the school board has presented to us, and regardless, not irregardless, but regardless of when they showed up in your box.
For tonight's meeting.
Correct.
For tonight's meeting.
Michael, you seconded? Any further discussion?
Tim?
Yes, Tim?
So I'm going to vote yes, because I think it's as good as we're going to get, but truly, the information is wanting in every regard. There's so many, we're looking into it at this late date. They've had 3 months, et cetera. I'm befuddled. And I also want to point out, while I'm talking about the insufficiency of the information that we have and the fact that we don't have a representative from the school board here, which to me is appalling, is that there are, if you look at your minutes, and I abstain, but I read every word in the minutes, there are 13 requests in the minutes that HR would look into. Of the 13, only 1 was answered. So I want to point that out. So we're just working entirely in the dark, as near as I can tell, which I think is really sad. Thank you.
in response to that, I can tell you that I did go to the school board meeting Tuesday evening in the hopes that, because I knew them being down to 3 members because of the 2 resignations, Brian was going to be out of town, as was Jen, and the final remaining member was just elected, so she would not have been able to provide any answers to us. I also asked if Glenn, the business administrator, or Nate, the superintendent, would be free, and I asked them this 2 weeks ago. And the response was that they both had scheduled commitments other places and would not be able to be here. I also did get a commitment from the superintendent that any questions that I would be delivering to them on Monday, because they're closed on Fridays for the summer, that we would have responses in the mail in our hands within 2 weeks. And I'm going to hold them to that. Because there was no excuse for these responses not coming through until I reminded them of it again.
So am I still can speak?
Of course.
That's all fine and good, and I appreciate what you've done. There's still other people like a principal, an assistant principal. I submit that I'm appalled that we don't have a representative of our school system here to speak to us tonight, to take notes and to go back with questions that we might have.
And they will be informed of our feelings about that. Any other questions or comments regarding the motion to accept the materials that we received?
Yes,
Bob?
my question has to do with what our plans are for the next meeting. The next meeting would be looking at the 3/4 year budgets. And we would be beginning the budget process at that time, or was it?
No, it's the following month. So we'd be meeting at sometime probably mid to late October.
So we'll be meeting for the 3/4. Okay, and I'm just postulating that possibly, again, this has nothing to do with the motion, so probably it's not the right time to bring it up. But my suggestion would be that we postpone dealing with this until that meeting, in which case we can address the final budget for 2020 and the first term of the new budget, the 3/4 budget for the school. In other words, handle these both at the same time, rather than trying to go through it now, because there are a lot of questions we have a sheet here where most of the sheet is blank in terms of the answers to questions we had.
Right, and I did point out that you're referring to the questions from the meeting, from our last meeting?
Right.
Yeah, I kind of was not very professional when I informed the chair and the superintendent that those were not acceptable responses to those questions.
Anyway, there's a motion on
Yeah,
the floor.
there is a motion on the floor. So,
I had a question.
certainly, Jim.
Did they know that there was a possibility to meet on Zoom tonight, where
No.
they wouldn't have to? Okay, so
No.
that wasn't set up by then?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was something that, let's see, I was there Tuesday night. When did, if it was, the selectmen were trying it out Tuesday night. The school board meeting was Tuesday night, so it wasn't
Okay.
something that was definite then. And quite frankly, it never occurred to me to even say that, well, the town is checking into this, so.
Madam Chair, point of order. Am I allowed to ask the school board, they say here that their board is focused on transitioning to a single SAU in the fall opening, somewhere in here anyway. They say basically that they're reducing their staff to go to a 2 SAU because they haven't gone to the 1 yet. I'd like to understand what percentage of staff they reduced.
Yeah,
go from 3 to 2.
there's a motion on the floor.
Yes.
Right, but this is just still conversation about the
Well, it's discussing it.
while we're
But you-
discussing the.
But you're
motion.
discussing information that's on papers that you haven't accepted
Okay.
the authenticity of, authenticity is something of.
I'll ask the
I
question.
want to accept the authenticity of the papers, and then you talk about it.
Okay, I'll offer my 2 cents worth, unless somebody else has something that they'd like to say first.
About the vote?
About the question at hand, will we accept these materials
Oh,
and
no, I have
and work
nothing to
this
say on that,
evening,
sorry.
or are we going
Thank
to
you.
not accept these materials?
Thank you.
I do think that Bob had a good point in holding off, because that would accomplish several different things if we did. I was informed that the separate expenditure report, the big one that had all of those lines that were over the $1,000 or more over, and the explanations, HR is researching encumbrance and allocation of basically it's the contracts, collective bargaining agreement. I don't know why I can never remember that term, but that would get cleared up. There would probably be a clearer picture of what's actually there. They went over all of this material at the meeting on Tuesday, and Glenn agreed when Brian asked. So this 603,000 could be higher if these encumbrances are removed because they're no longer needed. And he said, that's true. And then the 3% coming off. If we did wait until our meeting in October,
They're two different things, sir.
That's right. Are we accepting these or not?
You're going to
I
talk about...
thought we were
if you're not- if
discussing
you're
the
not
reasons
accepting them,
to
you
accept
can't
them
make-
or not accept them.
If you don't accept them, you can't really talk about it.
Okay.
So I'd like to,
Yeah,
once
okay.
again, say I'd like to accept these so that we can then talk about them and then talk about when we talk about them.
Okay. All right. Tim?
So I'm sorry, but you brought up something that, so,
Well, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because evidently I've
I
been
understand that.
reminded that we need to vote on whether we're even going to talk about them. Would that be a
So-
fair analysis?
and I understand that, and I agree with that, but I want to say that I feel it is very important that we discuss some of this tonight, that we come up with additional questions that we have tonight.
It's a separate question.
And so therefore, I think that we should accept the information that we have, so that then we can have a discussion on the school issues and the questions that we have, so that in 3 months, they can bring us, or in 2 weeks, they can bring us answers to our questions. So I'm saying that I am very much in favor of accepting this information as stated, so that I can then ask questions, and others can ask questions, that information will get to us in 2 weeks, or 3 months. Very important that we have this discussion tonight, particularly because of the SAU issue.
That's fair. What was the question?
That's what I'm
Good.
going to do. Nobody else has anything else to say. Okay, so the motion is to not accept.
No, to
It
accept.
says to accept the documents that have been presented to us, regardless of
Basically, to
when they
waive
are
your
not.
procedures.
Okay, so accept them. All right, so you're going to vote yes if you want to accept them. You'll vote no if you don't want to accept them. Make sense? Betsy?
Yes, but not happy about it.
Yay. Tom?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I'm sure I didn't miss anybody, and I will say yes. Good Tom? Yeah, I asked Tom. So I've got 11 to 1, that we will accept the materials for this meeting only. I'm sorry? The no was Steve Robinson. Okay. So, typically what we would do in past meetings is start with page 1 and ask if anybody had any questions on page 1. Tom?
I'd like to start with the report that the chair of the school board, Brian Winslow, has presented to us, and to simply make a couple of additional comments. One is, if I'm not mistaken, the school board is now down to 3 people because Shane Wells is left, and as Stephanie Arroyo. Brian is starting, I think, his second term
Correct.
on the school board. I do not know that Jen Fry has served before, so she would be
She was appointed.
new to the school board, and the other person who's serving, whose name I can't remember, is also newly elected. So I'm concerned about the governance of the school from that standpoint. The only other question, the other point I would make, and this is to Brian, if you can hear me, and this is to other people who might present documents to us, is that when you use acronyms like the business administrator is being hired through MRI, which obviously stands for magnetic resonance imaging. Right? Isn't that right? That would be helpful to clarify. SAU, I'm good on that. School Administrative Union, I know what that is. But then down here, there's an ESSR Roman numeral 4, and I don't know whether that's a typo for the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics or some other agency.
Elementary, secondary school relief fund.
It's so helpful to have you here, Paul.
I looked it up right before the meeting.
So, those of you who are used to using acronyms, please help us who are not. Now I'm happy to go elsewhere.
Madam Chair?
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll just go back to my original question.
Okay,
which is
Tom.
I would, if I'm allowed to ask that question, I would like to know the percent reduction when we went, of the manpower in the SAU, when we went from 3 to 2 schools. They say that they have downsized to a 2-district SAU. I'd like to know what that means.
I've got it written down.
From the standpoint of the staffing standpoint,
Right.
there's the second issue, which is the budgetary impact of taking this pie and paying for it with two school districts and ultimately 1.
Well, they've already addressed going from 3 to 2 with the
Right.
budgeting this past December.
Right.
And they'll go into, I would presume, they'll have to go into the budgeting aspects, going from 2 districts to 1 when we meet this coming December for their next fiscal year. Yes, Tim?
So, I'm not sure if everybody here understands the system and how it works. To get out of an SAU, you have to have a vote by the town. The town, there's a whole bunch of stuff you have to do. And once that's done, it goes to the town. You have to have meetings and all sorts of things. It goes to the town. And the town voted. So the town voted on March of 2019 in Stratford to get out of the SAU. The budget for the current year was done late last year, 2020. The fact of the matter is they've known since the election in 2019 that Stratford would be leaving the SAU. So in here it says that there have been additional movement of the SAU employees if we have downsized. So none of that is shown in the budget. If you look at the budget, the current budget of the SAU, which was done 3/4 of a year after they knew that Stratford was out of the SAU, it still has literally everybody. It's still $1,200,000, of which we're paying, I think Nottingham pays 58% and we pay 42%. Next year we will be paying 100% of it. 100% of whatever it is. So the system is now, just so everybody's clear, in June and election day, Nottingham voted overwhelmingly to get out. This should be of no surprise to anybody in this town. It was told that you were told that that was going to happen 5-6 years ago. And we had plenty of time to prepare. But that means in our budgeting process coming up, and I really think that this board should have a discussion about that, we will be taking over 100% of the cost of the SAU, whatever that may be. And it's my personal feelings are that we should say to the SAU, we should have a discussion. My personal feelings is we should say to the school board, we're only going to support this figure. You can do whatever you want, but we're only going to support X figure, like so let's say $500,000. And so that they can have that information for two reasons. Most importantly, budgetary planning. But second off, if they do this correctly, and I'm very concerned that they will, this is going to be life-changing for some people at that SAU, and they, out of fairness, need to understand that. I would like to give you just a 2-second, not 2-minute, if that, history of Pittsfield. Exactly what has happened to us, which we were well informed was going to happen, and we did nothing about it, happened in Pittsfield some time ago. They proceeded to do everything possibly they could wrong. And the outcome of that was they devastated that town for years because of the huge cost of the SAU. And they had one of the top 3 tax rates in this state for a number of years because of that. I'm sure you all realize that the biggest nut of the tax burden is from the school. And I don't have a problem with that. But it also needs to be fair. So I'm just saying that we should be up front as a budget committee, because they can bring us whatever they want. But as you should well know, once we get it, it's our budget. And I think there should be a discussion on that sooner than later.
Okay, well, we
Madam
can
Chair?
keep that under consideration. Yes,
I'm going to
Linda?
ask people to pull their mics closer,
Oh.
just to make sure you're picked up on the live stream. The rule is a bent elbow on the bottom.
Who's this longer?
Thank you, Linda. Okay, so I've got the question down for the percentage of the reduction of staff manpower, going from 3 districts to 2. Other questions, I've got Tom's note about clarifying the acronyms. Shall we move on to their expenditure report?
Oh, I'd like to move on to the expenditure, if you recognize me.
I will recognize
Hi,
you.
Ginger. I'm going to go back to what Bob had to say and ask each of you to keep in mind that if we get nowhere for the next however many minutes, because we have lots and lots of questions, but we have no opportunity to get answers, well, it may be useful to write down some, if not all, the questions. We may want to think about how we can most productively deal with the school situation, and that may be to defer action until we have Brian and the new superintendent, Nate Byrne, and anybody else who might be a resource in answering the questions. So,
I do have a suggestion for what anybody thinks that it might be worth. If you have questions that you are going to ask tonight, you could email them to Linda, perhaps tomorrow or whatever. Between Linda and I will make sure that they are at the SAU office Monday morning. I agree. Some of these things, just knowing what the lines are and whatever, and Tim, you probably can figure out why something is over or under as much as it is, just as I can. But in the interest of time, it might be easier to just compile everybody's questions and review this, as Bob had suggested, in October. Perhaps by then the audit will be done and they will have confirmed figures, as opposed to all these encumbrances will have to be cleared up by then. It's a suggestion.
Madam Chair, I just ask that all of those questions be forwarded to all the members of the, summarized and forwarded to all the members.
We can do that. Kim?
If you look at the excellent minutes that were presented to us tonight, they have all the questions that you asked at the last meeting. It seems like that was an excellent way to do it. It worked very well. They were concise. And if staff isn't overburdened at the moment, perhaps they could do the same thing, only get the minutes out to us fairly reasonable with all of the questions, because they're going to look through it. And they could enumerate all the questions that we have through that method. It certainly worked in those minutes. Why can't it work again?
So your position is continue and ask the questions this evening. Is that correct?
I like things in public, Ginger. Yes.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
I
like
totally
things in
agree
public.
they should be in
It's
public.
going to take time, but I think things should be in public, transparent, and above board.
Okay, let's get started. Because we've already agreed that we were going to accept this material for this evening. Anyone have questions on page 1 of the expenditure report?
I guess I have one. Are we looking at the page that has, page 1 is being the page that has all of the overage, or page 1
No,
of the budget?
the one that's stapled.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Quite honestly, I am looking at the one with all the overages as some general information. They're aware that they've got to check those out.
Yeah, I got it. I got my bifocals.
Get a big magnifying sheet. So looking at page 1 of the, how many page, I don't know, 7, 8 page report. Anything on page 1? I will point out that the $196,800 and roughly $31 that's left over on the Co-Brown tuition line, I did my research, went back to what they were budgeting for last, a year ago, well, 18 months ago, and they were budgeting for 193 students. Currently, the information that we got in our packet, there were 181 students. And for those who aren't aware of it, Co-Brown does charge daily, not for a full year if a student isn't attending a full year, or if they come in part of the year. So they have their reconciliation near the end of the year, and that could be right around now, if it hasn't already been done. So I'm just pointing that out. Yes, Tim?
So if you remember, the school board made and I'm assuming that's still going, because I've not heard it's not, the school board voted to include the tuition, Co-Brown tuition cost of a student visa the alt ed. So if you need to say 186, not 181, because we are paying the tuition for those 5 alt ed, and that automatically, by vote of the school board some years ago, moves to the SAU. I'm assuming that they're still taking care of the alt ed. I don't believe that Co-Brown has ever changed where they don't have alt ed.
Yeah, I think it's still the same arrangement.
There's a separate line on page 2, about 3/4 of the way down, that says special education tuition Co-Brown, where the cost them $224,000, which was $66,000
That's special ed.
more.
Alt ed is not special ed.
Right, alt ed
Alt ed
is a
is something
completely
that-
different program.
So in this case, the 181 includes the special ed
It
at
does,
Co-Brown.
yes. But it's not, the 181 does not include 5 students who, for one reason or another, are not able to be taught at Co-Brown. So they are handled under an alt ed program, which was, and I believe currently, is handled by the SAU upstairs.
I believe it still is.
And I think that's still going. So all I'm
So we
saying
can
to you
ask.
is we actually had, at the end of the school year, 181 or 186 bona fide students, not 181.
Yep.
The other thing to keep in mind is that you can see that 48 students are going to leave, or left. They're gone. And the best number I have is, I believe, only 47 are going in. So that's about the same, but only 32 students are coming into the school district. So that's going to reduce our total school count considerably again.
That could very
Which
well
is
happen.
one of my questions. So I would like to know exactly how many students, how many kindergarten students are signed up for the fall class.
Okay. Any other questions on page 1? Okay, moving on to page 2. Okay, not hearing anything from anybody. How about page 3? Nothing? Let's move on to page 4.
Do they still have the extra nurse on?
I know they did until the end of the school year. I don't know if the plans are to continue that in the fall.
Brian said they weren't going to. I'd just like to confirm.
I will write down the question. Any others? Okay, moving on to page 5. Yes, Tim?
I guess I wanted to ask, before we get started, range to date is new. What does that mean?
This, and we've gone back and forth with them on this too, that is basically, if you look up at the top of your sheet, it's saying from June 1st to June 30th, 2021.
1 month.
So range to date is what they spent or what was applied to each of these lines from June 1st to June 30th. The next column is year to date,
Okay.
so that would be incorporated in, and then what the balance is.
So if I was to go back a month, the year-to-date would be on professional teacher salaries, if I went back a month and looked at this report, that would be 249,496 less on year-to-date? Is that correct?
If that's the figure, read back on page 1.
Oh, on page 1, I'm just using the
Right,
teacher
right, and which
salaries.
example was it again,
So
Tim?
teacher salaries, if I was to go and look
Yeah.
at this report a month ago for May,
Yeah.
the year-to-date 1,474,376 would be 249,496 less?
Correct.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you, I was confused about that new line, I've never seen that.
Yeah, there have been several changes.
Yeah, it's quite
New
confusing.
program,
Yeah,
which doesn't do everything the way we're accustomed to having it done.
no
We'll
comment.
leave it at that. Any other questions on page 5? Okay, moving on to page 6. Another question, Tim?
Didn't say a word.
I know, but I
I guess I have one.
feeling yes. What's your question, Mr. Teacher?
Secretarial wages are over budget by $20,000.
They're looking into that if you
Is
look at their
that,
notes.
Somewhere else,
is that the 5120 line?
it's the 5110 line. Right?
I stand corrected. Yep, the 5110 line. Okay. So you'd like to know why the overage?
Yeah.
Got it?
And the secretary showed me.
So that's in this report, and it says that researching encumbrances and allocations, so,
Right.
which it says 100 times.
But
Okay.
we will let them know that there are some specific lines that we'd like to have specific answers to. Betty,
Is there more than one secretary?
there is more than one, but I couldn't tell you how many.
Can't be too many, the budget's only 80 grand, so. Actually, the budget's 67.
Yeah, and I don't know what, because this budget was prepared, as Tim had mentioned earlier, in December of 19 for the 2021 school year, and that was pre-COVID, and I quite frankly have no idea how much of any of this is normal function versus responding to COVID issues, whether it be staffing, whether it be supplies. So hopefully, they will get this all resolved. We can ask the questions to let them know there are specific things we're inquiring about, and hopefully they'll have the rest of it for our next meeting. The specific questions, I'm going to ask them for answers within the 2 weeks. But we're obviously not asking every single question that could be asked. However, if you come up with any questions after the meeting tonight, if you email them to Linda, we'll get them coordinated. Send an email back to everybody on the committee to let them know what additional questions are being submitted to the SAU and the school board for responses within 2 weeks. Tim?
So, could I submit that I have 12 questions that are in the minutes that were not answered? I would like those answered.
Oh, I intend on those
So
getting
I just want to
answered.
make sure that you are, and I
Oh,
assume you
yeah.
are. And there's 100,000 questions on this sheet that are unanswered that I would like answers to. So,
And those we're not going to get answers to until they they do their research. They don't have those answers yet, and I don't know if they have the capability to resolve all of those and answer our questions within 2 weeks. They will be
I wasn't
having
putting
to
a
get them
timeframe on it, but
resolved.
I would like some answers.
I-
But I'm just saying, we should say that we have those questions too.
Okay,
I'd just like to back up quickly to one
Certainly.
thing on the front page, on the summary sheet that Brian sent us, the acronym, Tom, ESSR.
yes, yes.
$243,000. I'd like to know what, can they brief us on what they're planning on spending that on? Because that's only 2 years of funding. I'd hate to see them start doing continuing, like manpower and things
Right,
like that.
right.
That money should be used on, one-time kind of fixes for things, because it goes away. And if they use it for long-term things, the taxpayer will be on the hook.
So is that state funding or is that Fed funding?
I think it's both. It comes from the
Okay.
Fed and it's distributed by the state. It's the same as the CARES Act.
Is that a half and
The
half?
town is getting.
You get a half 1 year and you get the half the
Right.
second year?
Yeah, I think there's money in both years. It might
Okay.
be the same money in both years.
Okay.
Walter, but Nick knows, we've been trading emails back and forth on this subject, I know.
Okay, I got my note.
Sorry to back you.
No, that's fine. Okay, back to page 6, any other questions?
I went too fast.
Page 7?
Do we know what the repairs were? I mean, that goes kind of to the funding grant, because those funding grants can be used for infrastructure.
Oh, I don't,
Some of that money could be diverted to fix things that would take money out of the operating budget. That would, I'm looking at line, sorry, Ginger.
yeah, I know which line you're looking at. The,
46,000, over budget.
yeah, the 5430?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, and I will ask, if that is the repairs that Brian indicated, concrete work to the sidewalks and steps, stucco repair and painting of the outside of the building. I don't know if that's it, but I will be, well, painting's expensive, But I will ask on that particular line, which is the 5430.
Again, what's going on now is not in this budget. This budget was closed as of 30th of June.
Last year's stuff.
Yeah, but I have no idea when they started their repairs. In that particular situation, there may be some of that in there, I don't know. Because I don't go to the meetings on a general rule anymore. That's enough. Okay, what were repairs? Fly over. Anybody else have any questions? Anything else on 7? Okay, moving on to 8.
Just,
Yes, Tom?
I'm just curious about, not about how elementary and high school transportation was handled this past year, but I'm concerned about whether they've got all that under control as school opens because of the, quote, crisis in finding people who want to drive school buses.
I didn't hear the end of his question.
He's referencing the transportation, the bus issue, lack of drivers, that kind of thing. The only thing that I can add, for what it's worth, is it was discussed at the school board meeting Tuesday evening. They do have 3 buses, they do have 3 drivers. They're in the process of setting up the routes, which are going to be announced probably, if not before, then at their next meeting, they said, which is August 11th.
This is for the elementary school.
I'm
For both, elementary and Co-Brown.
reassured.
Well, because they start at different times, so. So I have no further
Good.
input other than that, but do we want to, well, because that's, I can certainly ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah, extra buses.
Anything else on page 8?
I guess I have a question, Ginger. So as
Yes.
far as we know, they've only encumbered 218,193. And if their numbers are correct, that'll leave 603, or are there other things that we don't know about?
Well, I'm going strictly by this. This is what they reviewed Tuesday night. The encumbrances, they're working to clean up. You know, for instance, on page 8, the first one was special ed transportation for high school. They've got an encumbrance of $25,000 and change. My understanding is that they're looking back through to make certain that that invoice was already paid, and if so, then that will come off.
Okay. I understand all of that.
Yeah.
My question is, are there any other things that we're going to find out later that they've encumbered? Or, you know,
We had specifically asked for this meeting to include a list of any items that they encumbered from this money
okay.
to be paid. We got nothing back indicating that they did. Yeah, I know in years past, sometimes they've decided to buy the computers for September out of the money that might have been left over from the previous fiscal year. They didn't mention anything at all that they were doing anything like that.
I guess we'll find out.
We shall find out. Yep. Any other questions on page 8? Okay, does anyone have any other questions
I do.
for the school board that I can add to the list that we will be providing them? Timothy?
So, in the election in June 8th, I think, the school asked if the town would approve to raise the amount of money they retain from surplus. And the town overwhelmingly said no.
Correct.
They've done it anyway. I'd like to know why.
No, the warrant article, if memory serves me, was to increase it to the 5%, which
That's
is
correct.
now allowed. They're planning on retaining 3%,
Regardless,
which is
the
what
town
they
said-
were doing.
Regardless, the town said no.
No, that wasn't to retain anything. It was to change it from 3% to 5%.
So it has been the policy of the school board since this thing came up some years ago. The town has had a similar fund for years. And the policy was 2%. They wanted to raise it from 2 to 5. The town said no. So they raised it to 3. I'd like to know why.
I will put it down and get that clarified, because my recollection was they were at 3, they wanted to raise
No,
it to
it's
5,
2.
the
I am
town said no.
Positive, beyond a shadow of a doubt, in my mind, it's 2%.
Well, I know where to find your mind if you're wrong.
Okay.
But I say that friendly. No, I will ask for the clarification on it. 3%.
And it clearly says they're raising it to 3.
Oh, yeah, they
From
did
two.
say that they were raising, they were going to retain 3%.
I can read, Ginger, it says
I thought that's what it said.
clearly, if I can find it. Oh, come on.
Yeah,
The
the
Budget
board
Committee
is-
has closed with an estimated surplus of 600 the budget year. The board has voted to retain up to 3%.
Right.
And the policy has always been 2%. That's what the
So
board
that's what
voted.
I'm gonna
So
check
they've
on.
changed.
Why 3% retention?
Maybe it's a typo?
No, they did say 3% at the meeting.
No, I don't think it's a typo.
No, this isn't a typo. They did say 3% at the meeting
I
Tuesday
think they
night.
thumbed their nose at the town. That's what I think.
Okay, anything else? Okay, I will be,
You want to look at any of the other items that you will not be here to talk about, like the enrollment and the special ed report or anything?
I'm going on the presumption that everybody has looked at the enrollments. I did pull the enrollments, the last 3 that we received. I'm just going to find them again now. And the enrollment has gone down marginally for the last 3 periods that we got reports. But I was looking primarily at Co-Brown.
So what did you, I
So-
meant to look that up. What did you start out the year with? Do you have that?
I don't have that one. I found the one we received in November, the one we received in April for our April meeting, and the one that we got today.
Last year, they were down about 30 or 40 students.
Yeah, I mean, Northwood School is down tremendously.
Right.
In just 1 year, while they were going to school. It dropped incredibly. If you look month to month, it just
So
continued.
in district, not counting homeschool, in November of 2020, K through 8 was 359.
350
Excuse me, 345. The prior month, October, was 359.
Yeah.
So they dropped 15. And the homeschool number stayed the same, so it wasn't them transferring from in-school to out-of-school. In April, the in-district for K through 8 was 340. The prior month was 350. There were 3 additional homeschoolers in April compared to March. We have no way of knowing if they were people who moved into town or if parents decided to keep them home rather than being part of.
No, during the school year, I meant to bring the figures. We dropped more than 20 students during the school year.
Yeah, because,
And you can see that 46, I think it's 46 are going to Co-Brown, is that right?
I think it's 47.
47 are going to Co-Brown, 48 are leaving Co-Brown, so that's a drop of 1. But my best information I have so far, and I think it's pretty accurate, is we have 32, but I've asked the question, so we'll get an answer, of kindergarten. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with all of the numbers, just a few years ago, we had all 3 schools in our SAU had almost identical numbers. There was only one difference between the 3 towns, 720, 720, and 721 students. And so we have dropped precipitously
Right.
in that time. Stratford has dropped some. Nottingham has dropped very little. That's why they're paying far more, a higher percentage of the SAU cost, is because they have not dropped in students like we have. And it's based on the student count. Our cost, we pay 38% and they pay 52, whatever it is.
Yeah, I forget, it's...
58 and 42, sorry.
We
That's
did.
what it is.
Okay, so you wanted to know the number of students currently registered for kindergarten?
Yes.
Just kindergarten?
Yeah, really. I mean,
Okay.
I'm going to assume that.
I'm guessing, well, no, because that's as of June 30th. Okay, let me ask.
I mean, the next time we meet, we will get a student count of the
Right.
current enrolled.
For the current
students at
enrollment,
Northwood
right.
School. I'm patient, I'll wait.
Okay, any other questions that you're thinking of? I am going to resubmit these questions from April. And reaffirm that these are not acceptable answers. You know, when a question is asked, why is a certain amount encumbered? And the response we get is NA. Well, it had been encumbered and we wanted to know why it was encumbered. So I will be more than happy to make sure they understand our questions. So, anything else on the school? Tom?
Well, out-of-school placements can, as this list shows, be a $200,000 charge.
For one
I'm
placement.
always interested to know if they know anything about kids aging out of this, is one thing without violating privacy.
Well, and at one time, we used to get the list indicating if
Right,
a particular student was elementary versus high school.
right. And we also, in that segmentation, could see that a student, the support for a particular student had changed year to year as a function of services provided,
Correct.
transportation needed, so forth. So that's a,
But unfortunately, they have informed us last year or the year before that they can no longer provide that depth of information because it's too easily used to identify a particular student. So I'm just thankful we've got a breakdown as opposed to just a lump sum on a,
right.
but it's also helpful to see this to show the variation in special education costs.
Right.
So, okay. One final time, because it's 8:30 and we still have to go through the town. Anything else for the school?
It's not so much a question for the school as much as just that we will have an opportunity when we're reviewing the first quarter of the new budget to actually go over this final budget for the
Yes,
school.
because they will be providing us with updated numbers.
Okay, thank you.
We won't be using these same sheets because they should have everything resolved as far as the encumbrances and what have you. So we should have far more accurate numbers. Okay, moving on to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Not to belabor this, looking at the school district revenue report, one of the questions would have is how much money is coming into the school through various federal and state COVID relief funding, so that their unanticipated revenue shows $102,000 coming into the school that they didn't know was coming.
So we're looking for a breakdown of the unanticipated?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, we looked at the special ed report for out-of-district placements, the projection for the end of the year, it's on there, they're looking at potentially 603,000. They didn't identify any potential financial issues that we should be made aware of. So we'll end the school and go on to the town. And at this point, Jim and I are going to share because I forgot my sheet. So, does anyone have any questions regarding the town's expenditure report on page 1?
The obvious one is that salaries are way out of whack, and I understand it's a default budget versus what may actually be out there, but
And since we've been on a default budget for, this is the 4th year, if I remember correctly. Third year? Thank you. The increases in salaries that both the selectmen and/or school board recommended along with our recommendations were in the proposed budget, and the proposed budget didn't pass, so they have to go back to this.
it might be nice to know what that number is that we're gonna have to make up from somewhere else.
So you'd like to know what the actual salaries are for those positions that are showing over?
Some, that we're short
Yeah?
300,000 or whatever the heck the number is.
Okay,
And we gotta, so we know we have to make that up somewhere else.
okay. Anything else on page 1?
You don't have this document
I forgot it at home.
in share?
I'm sharing with Jim. I'm, I'll go back and forth. I shared with you the last time, Tom.
Don't
And-
let this happen again.
I will try to be mindful of your sensitive feelings on the matter.
And you may be in luck, and I think I may have 2 of these.
Well, if you do. Okay, so nothing on page 1? Oh, thank you. So we'll go ahead to look at page 2. Ask you questions on the town stuff. We actually have people here to answer the questions.
Everything's salary on this page.
Yeah, there are going to be those certain positions that we're aware of that salaries were increased because of new people in the positions, but because the proposed budget didn't pass, they're still going to cover those someplace else in the operating budget. And where they choose to cover it is up to them. So does anyone have anything on page 2? Page 3.
I guess
Yes,
I'm
Jim.
flummoxed about the increased bank fees. I mean, they have really gone up. Like, I'm a little surprised at that.
What line?
What line, Tim?
141,503, 331 bank fees, way down the bottom of page 3.
Oh, we're on page 3. Okay.
I do remember this happening on the school board some time ago, probably 5-6 years ago, and they went out to banks and managed to find a bank where the fees were considerably less. And I'm just kind of curious as to what the issue is that our bank fees, we budgeted for 500, et cetera. I mean, that's not an issue of default budget there.
Well, yeah, I think it could be. Tim, if you look at the prior year expenses, I know. I'm going to ask her in 1 second.
It even has her hand up.
See, I miss you sitting on the end because you used to look up there for me.
That's what I just did.
Miss Shelley, would you enlighten us, please? Are you on?
Am I on? I'm on.
Now you are.
Okay.
It's a partial problem of default budget because we're working on a 3-year-old budget of $500. And also in the past, I've discovered that the fees and the interest revenue were netted out when the entries were made in the system. They should have been separated. The interest earned is supposed to be shown as a revenue, and then fees against that is supposed to be shown as an expense. But in past years, it had been netted out, so you weren't really looking at a true number for the expense itself.
So would you know offhand how much was in the budget that did not get passed?
Hold on.
Yeah, I don't have it written.
It was still $500.
So the
Is
point
the
I'm,
budget.
I'm trying to make as far as the default budget, and we're talking small money here, but big percent, is that I just have a feeling, and I think this happened a couple of times in the budget, where I think that would have been clearly a good thing to raise the default budget with. In other words, that's kind of a contractual agreement with the bank that you have to pay certain fees. So,
I don't think that would qualify as a contractual.
I'm not
agreement.
sure. I'm
it is
thinking
not
that
a-
would be able to be.
It is not a contractual obligation, and
No.
I believe I wasn't here when this budget was created,
Right.
but I believe that if they were looking at past history of expenses, where they were looking at numbers that had been netted out, they would have said, oh, well, 500 is sufficient, so I can kind of see that happening. But when you split it out, revenue on one side and expenses on the other, then your expenses are going to look higher.
Other questions on page 3 or 4?
Just an observation on 4, since I've been on the budget committee, that's the lowest legal fees I've seen. Should I read something into that?
Could you repeat what you?
Yeah.
Could you repeat what you said?
Repeat, speak into the mic,
And
Paul.
speak into the microphone, that'll help.
I said, since I've been on the budget committee, I think this is the lowest legal fees I've seen. And I just wonder if that's a good thing. I mean, in the past years, they've been $25,000 or $30,000.
Yeah, but I think you might be thinking about the selectmen's legal fee line versus
There's
just.
always just this one line item, and they put $15,000 in it every year, and we usually blow the heck out of it. So,
Oh, I see. I was looking at it one down below. I thought you were
we're
saying
not blowing the heck
planning.
out of it this year.
Okay.
It's a good thing.
Well, I come in to sign some
Right.
papers the other day, and they had a bunch of lawyers in here, so I think you're speaking too soon.
Bill hasn't come in yet?
I think you're speaking too soon.
All right, no.
I got kicked out,
Sorry.
I'm just telling you.
I guess we'll have to wait for our next report. Anything else on page 4? How about 5? Yes, Tim?
So we're not encumbering things like general town insurance anymore, things like that?
I will defer to Cheryl.
So, general town insurance, line 100, 41961 to 520, 56,400 or whatever. It's not encumbered, and I'm assuming we're still going to have to pay insurance. So we don't encumber things like that?
It's not encumbered in this line. It's a payment once a year, and we were waiting for, in July, they bring out the revised invoice. So when you look at the next report you'll see the actual expense
Okay.
that we paid.
Okay, if nothing else on page 5, how about 6?
The OT for police officers. I thought I heard the chief tell me last year he was hiring more part-time officers, so we didn't have to work the full-time guys overtime. It looks like he's blown the whole overtime budget already. Pretty much, anyway, 75% of it.
You're looking at the 140?
I am, yes.
I will. Do either of you have?
Do.
Terrific. Enlighten us, please, Shelley.
Okay. In the past, the overtime line in the police department had been charged in error to the full-time officer's salary line instead of overtime, so that made it look underspent. So now that we're putting the overtime in the overtime line, that's the difference.
So next year, we should see a large increase in this line item. Is that how I should read this, and a reduction in the full-time police? I mean, it should balance out, right? I mean,
Well, I'm going to jump in here for a second. I did hear that they're down 2 full-time officers right now because Jane Wells is now over in Kosovo, and another full-time officer recently retired, so they're, am I correct, Walter, that they were looking to hire?
Yes, you are correct. They are down, have been down for a fair share of the year, 2 full-time positions. And so, obviously, the positions have to be covered, so most of that has been absorbed by overtime with the other officers.
down 2 officers most of the year, and they're almost 10% over budget.
Other questions on 6?
I'm complaining, but they're not burning much fuel either.
Are we talking about gas, or are we talking?
It's way down. Usually they spend that line item. Only spend like
Well, I
7
think
grand.
there's maybe part of it is a difference in just how POs are being used then, now. There was a big change over the last couple of years in,
The thing would go up because they got more cruisers.
but if they don't have enough officers to drive them, you know. Anything on page 7?
Heating and oil, I noticed in a couple of line items, we've pretty much spent the year budget on heating. Is that just the change in oil prices and propane prices? Or? Yeah, I guess they are up about 30%.
Hopefully, while they're still relatively low, they'll top off tanks before the cold weather gets here.
I
And
got some oil I'm pumping out this weekend. You want?
I have a full tank right now, Paul, but thank you for
Before I
thinking
demo
of
the
us.
house, I figured I better get the oil out of the oil tank so I didn't have a second disaster.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
I think that's pretty normal, though, to have a higher percent of it out in the January to,
April, yeah, I guess
yeah,
you're
than
right.
there is in the back half of the year.
Right.
I mean, it's certainly weather-related, but I think if you looked at past, you'd find that is normal.
Right. And in the past years, there have been suggestions that are sometimes acted upon and sometimes not, that while there's money on the line, top off the tanks so that you're sure you have oil come January 1st.
Yeah, but this doesn't show how much they use.
Exactly.
This shows how much they bought.
Exactly.
And if they were intelligent, and I'm hoping they are, they filled up everything they could while the price was down, because the
That-
price is still going to go up by
Oh,
default.
absolutely.
So I hope our tanks are all full, and I'm going to assume that's what they've done.
Yep. Other questions?
Oh, I did have one.
And it would
Ambulance
be,
building costs in 2020 were recorded in the blank. What is the blank? This is line 333 on page 7.
Usually they give that to
mine says contracted services line.
It says what?
Ambulance
Ambulance building.
billing.
It just, they forgot something.
They're on the wrong page.
usually it's a separate sheet.
Page 7.
Page
Director
7,
gives us.
333 on the end.
Yeah.
So what was it recorded in?
And I'm looking at the
I
notes.
think your page is different. He's looking at this.
Oh, see, mine includes in the contracted services line.
Okay.
Ambulance billing.
Yep, ambulance billing costs in
What's the
2020
date
were
here?
recorded
What's your date?
Well, you're just special.
7/15. Hey, Tom gave it
How
to
did
me.
you? I gave
Tom
her
gave it to me.
a day old and $1 short. What can I say?
It's his
Well,
fault.
actually more, but you want to switch?
That's not in mine.
You're not special.
Anyway, this raises a point that I'd like to make at this time, which is, anytime we're looking at a piece of paper, it
Let's
would be
confirm
useful
the
to
date.
me if we all looked at the title of the packet and agreed that it says Town of Northwood, New Hampshire, 2021 Quarter 2 Expenditure Report, General Fund, and also down at the bottom, what date it's printed. And I'm looking at one that says 7/16.
Mine says 716.
Yeah.
And so if you're all, if you are all have a 7/16 version, then we're all on the same page, to coin a
Except for
phrase.
me,
Except for
Tom
her,
gave me
because
his extra
I
copy.
gave her the copy that resulted from a meeting with Walter and Cheryl.
Oh, that's what it's from.
So it's
Okay.
So it's a day early
A
and
day
$1
earlier.
short.
Okay. Yeah, but all the numbers are the
So
same.
our apologies to you.
Thank you.
And so the question remains on page 7, ambulance billing costs in 2020 were recorded in the contracted services. Okay. Next.
Any other questions on 7? Okay, moving on to 8.
Just to clarify, in the highway administration, Chris Brown has become a paid person, right? Cheryl, is this where, under highway administration, is this where Public Works foreman salary and other things have been lumped under the road agent or whatever Chris Brown is considered?
The Public Works foreman salary is the very top line under Highway Administration, and that's separate. In the past, road agent's salary line, which is a -130 line, which is 6 lines down or so, that was where the road agent's stipend, I believe it was.
Right.
But the current Public Works foreman's salary line is the top line.
Okay. So my question to follow up is, I thought I had heard some discussion in changing the pay for that position from a salary of X dollars per year to hourly.
He's already paid hourly, that's what he told me anyway when I asked him.
Well, initially, it was a salaried position when that position was
He
created.
told me he was getting paid by the hour when I asked him.
So,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I think Walter.
Yes, he is being paid by the hour. That change was made, I think, back in January. But it was determined that he didn't really qualify because of the requirements of salary under the Internal Revenue Code. So he's paid on an hourly basis.
So it is an hourly rate times however many hours, and this is what we anticipate it to be. Got it. Thank you, Walter.
You're welcome.
Anything else on page 8?
So I have an unrelated question, which I mean to ask the select board, but I'm just curious, since we have the town administrator here, is there any plan to look at the incredible amount of dead trees lining our roads? And
Yeah,
to
that's a
give you a,
selectman.
for instance, I would ask you to go look at Lucas Pond where it changes to Nottingham, and you will see that they have marked with black tape around all of the trees that they're going to take down prior to these trees falling down on people's houses and power lines and everything else this next winter. I wonder if the town has got any plans for such a thing.
Walter, if you have any information that you could give us, that would be great. If not, then perhaps you can pass along the request to the selectmen for the next meeting?
Well, as you know, a lot of the trees within the right-of-way reference to power lines are maintained and taken care of by the power companies, obviously, because they're trying to prevent power outages. What I understand in the past and what's currently being practiced is that any road that's scheduled for improvement gets evaluated as far as trees are concerned as well, so that obviously if we're going to pave a road, put in new culverts, et cetera, that we would go through and take care of any tree removal that has to be done before the paving gets done, so obviously it doesn't get damaged. But I can't tell you that we have a specific tree maintenance plan at this point in time. That's not something that we have. You know, we lost a tremendous amount of trees in this spring weather, late winter weather, and if we could take more down, we certainly would. But yeah, we do have a line item for that, and as we are able to address those, we take them, but we don't have a specific plan laid out for each road as far as which trees need to go.
So the trees I'm talking about are elm trees. We're not elms, ash trees. We have lost and are losing an incredible amount of ash trees. And I know that certainly on the side of the road where you have power lines, it's a power line issue. But there's also the other side of the road that is not a power line issue. And we have a lot of dead trees right now.
If I can speak to that, because we've had 2 trees along Catamount Road taken down, big, huge, dead ash trees, and the black and white tape around them indicates that they're on the Eversource power people's list of trees to take down because they threaten power lines. There are, as you point out, not only around Lucas Pond, but also on the backside of Janus Pond, there are a large number of ash trees. And
I'm agreeing with you 100%.
And that's why 2 years ago, we put a line item in the budget to fund terrestrial invasive species mitigation and put $1 in very prudently, and then put $5,000 in this year. We should have been putting that money in, little did we know, in larger amounts longer ago.
Right.
But the exponential eradication of ash trees makes that $5,001 look paltry.
So
at this point.
I turned down 12 on my backyard this year.
And that's your problem.
it's assuming, and I think that everything you said is correctly, so I get back to my point where why on Lucas Pond Road? That's one road between 43 and Demons store. And a third of it belongs to Nottingham and 2/3 of it belongs to Northwood. If the black thing is from Eversource, and I think it is, that's only on the Nottingham side. So obviously, it looks to me like Nottingham has made an issue of it, and Eversource is going to go in and fix it, because not one black band is around a tree in Northwood.
I don't know that it's town by town. It's their call as to whether they think a tree endangers their power lines. But
Oh, I would just ask you to go look at that.
I'll be happy
They're
to
the
see
same
that.
trees.
But-
Okay, we're off, but I understand.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw that out when I had the
Points
town
taken,
administrator.
and I'm sure that Walter will be more than happy to pass along the concerns, and if it's something that our Public Works foreman, or whatever his title is, should be looking at, would be so directed.
a little bit like the liability for employees who are retiring, and how much money you anticipate having to
That you're
pay
going
out.
to need to pay out, right.
You're going to need to pay out. And that's
Okay,
what- that's-
until you brought it up 2.5 years ago, we didn't even know that there was an invasive species, so kudos to you for bringing it up. Anything else on page 9?
The-
8? I'm sorry, we did not finish 8?
Then you jumped ahead, but I do have a question on 9 when we get there.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything about 8, so let's go to 9. What's your question, Paul?
This is to Walter, actually. Are you actually getting the 102 in the grant money this year? Because roads and gas taxes were way down, though they have significantly recovered as we finish this budget year. So I was just curious how you actually getting the 102?
That's our understanding. That's what we've been told, that they would fund us to at least the level that we were funded in the prior year. Obviously, we don't get those numbers till later on, towards the end of the year, when they go about setting the tax rate.
Is that a year behind? Do you know? I mean, is it?
I think it's 2 years behind.
2020's roads and taxes or gas and roads taxes that
That you get notified about
this
in
year.
20...
If I recall, I don't know if you know, Cheryl, but I think it's at least 2 years behind.
Oh, okay.
Where's Scott Breyer will need him most?
Another one, Paul?
Well, just, I mean, I think in the actual budget, the highway cleaning and maintenance had been somewhat gutted. Planning on doing this work? My memory's any good, perhaps it's not.
Okay, so keep in mind one thing. No, this is up to June 30th. They did not have a budget
Know that.
until June 8th.
The question is, are they, because originally there wasn't really a lot of money here, I don't believe. And then, until you got to the fall budget, and then you got the 3-year-old budget, which had all the road maintenance in it, which got taken out 2 years ago. Are you guys planning on it? Because you also have warrant articles for roads, or 2 warrant articles for roads, actually.
Yep, so if I may,
Yeah, please, Walter.
so we just opened bids on the 3 projects, road projects we want to do this year. The bids came in at approximately $337,000. We have executed that contract. We used $150,000 that was appropriated in the warrant article for road reconstruction. We'll use $150,000 out of the operating budget, out of these categories.
50 though, right? You had one warrant article for 100,000.
I'm not done yet. Okay. So we did establish a capital reserve fund for both pre-season improvements, like taking down a tree, so forth, in anticipation of the coming year's work. And we're also going to be using $37,000 out of that reserve account for the total of $337,000.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to page 10. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody jumping to ask a question, so let's go to page 11.
Did we ever hire the park director?
Walter, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, we do have a part-time recreation director who's doing a great job. So far.
One time you were talking about hiring a full-time, right?
Well, that's what was in the budget that was proposed, but obviously when the budget wasn't approved, we didn't have the funding for hiring full-time, so we were fortunate to find someone that was willing to work part-time with us right now.
Other questions? Tom, did you have something? Okay, moving on to page 12. Okay, not hearing anything. Last page, page 13. Okay, no other questions on the expenditure report for the town? Okay, so, got the revenue report,
I have a couple on that one.
okay?
So, I believe the state federal grant, 612,523, is that for the Bull Lake Road Bridge? 031?
I'm gonna defer
Here,
to you guys.
I had the same thing.
I don't have the breakdown, but a portion of that is for the Bull Lake Bridge. We haven't been fully reimbursed for all the state share of the construction to date.
So you don't know what, do you know what it costs in total?
The total repair, replacement of that bridge,
Yes.
it was just under $800,000.
So you've taken, I don't have the figure, exact figure, but $112,000 out of the Red List Bridge account. I was assuming that that was approximately 20% of 612, or our 20%. So you're saying that we haven't seen all the bills yet?
Now, we just submitted for the engineering cost. The engineering cost hadn't been submitted, so that was recently submitted, and we haven't received the reimbursement on that yet, and the remaining construction cost.
And that will that be also 80/20?
Yes.
Has the town discussed, so that there obviously is going to be some money left over in that red listed bridge account, what they're going to do with that?
I don't recall if there's been any designation as far as any other bridges at this point in time that are going to be addressed.
If you went to the minutes, you would find that that money was, there was a cost of the bridge, which obviously is considerably less than what was spent on the bridge. And we divided that into three and asked for that amount of money from the town on 3 different years, 84, 84, and 84,000. And that was for a specific bridge. It wasn't for, and you certainly can go look at the minutes and the original warrant article, it wasn't for a perpetual red-listed bridge fund. I happened to be on the select board at the time. So my question is, you know, when you're done, what was going to be done with that? Will it be dissolved in the difference given back to the town, or?
Yeah, board hasn't had that discussion yet.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask Linda a quick question. Didn't we have a warrant article the following year that
I think we
changed the
changed
incentive
it so it was a general.
Did you? I'll look at that
Yeah.
then.
I'm pretty sure that it got changed so that it
Because of
wasn't
that
a
concern.
specific bridge. It was any. Because we have a couple of others in town that need work. And we knew that at the time.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But my recollection is that money was for a specific bridge.
The money that was raised was for that bridge, but if there was money left over and it was an open warrant article that you could add more in to take care of other bridges.
I'll look that up.
That was, I almost positive that was the intent. But I could be wrong, so let me know. Tom.
I just want to ask Walter if there's been discussion about, I don't know whether it's a bridge or a culvert or some combination at the foot of High Street, and what the plan is there, if that's on the radar.
Since I've been here, there was a very brief discussion about perhaps replacing or repairing that culvert and reopening that road, but that hasn't come back up in recent months.
Any other questions on the revenue report?
Oh, yes, I did. What was the, last year, what was the 83,124 in miscellaneous revenue?
In 2020?
I don't have the actual breakdown with me. I can certainly get that for you, but it's a combination of various miscellaneous items, but I can get that to the board. Various miscellaneous revenue items, but I can get a breakdown for you and get it to the board.
Thank you.
Before her time.
Yeah, and that was before Cheryl arrived, all of that. So, did you start it in January, Cheryl?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The special duty revenue, is that the police details?
I'm sorry?
Special duty revenue, 039, is that police details?
Yes.
We've only got, what happens with all that money, I guess? It all go to the officer, or we must get something for the use of the vehicles, right? $4,000?
So it's like $50 an hour, and we pay the officer $26 an hour, so we get the difference for the vehicle, is the way I remember it working.
Yeah, and that goes into a fund which can be utilized for unanticipated expenditures that the police department needs.
The question is that fund, the special duty?
Yes, to the best of my recollection, that's what it was
So it
called.
seems odd it only has $4,000.
No, that's just for this, you see, that's not the balance of the account, that's just for the period.
For 6 months of the year?
The last column is the first 6 months of 2021. The middle column is what they were anticipating they'd get for the whole year of 2021. And the first column is what they got last year.
Ginger, if I
Yes,
may?
ma'am.
Thank you. The estimated revenue, which is the middle column where you're seeing the $4,000, that was taken off of the MS 737 form for the budget. I was not here when the budget was created. I don't know what that $4,000 was estimated as. Any revenue that comes in for special details goes into the special detail revolving fund, so it would not affect the general fund.
It's not in there.
It is not in that,
Does that show up anywhere?
not on this revenue report because it's a separate fund, but I can certainly get a report if the board wants to see that.
I know we bought a cruiser out of it. I'm just
Not
curious
yet,
how
we
much money
haven't.
goes into that fund every year, and could we maybe use it like we use the ambulance fund?
Yeah, actually, I don't believe that vehicle has been ordered yet, has it? Because they aren't in
Yes, it
yet?
has.
Oh, it has, okay.
Well, last year, they bought one out of that. They bought 2 cruisers, and one was out of that fund.
One was out of that fund. Right. Other questions on the revenue?
The recycling fees, that's probably metal, okay. I mean, in half a
Metal,
year.
cardboard, I don't think.
Well, I
we have
mean,
to-
but we're already at 19,000,
Yeah.
and last year, for the whole year, it was 944. I mean, I took 3 pickup loads out of Camp Yavna and got over $1,000 this week. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, people were staying home because of COVID, and they would cleaning out their houses.
Prices are way up because of shortages
It
of
is way up,
plastic
yeah.
and
It's
everything out
incredible.
there, so recycling.
Just incredible what they're paying for metal right now at Harvard.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, too, that Chris Brown has made some changes in the way that we handle our recyclables and so forth, which has really helped us in terms of our revenue for the materials that we have. So I think that's definitely attributed to some of the increase in the revenue over last year.
Good. Any other questions on the revenue report? Okay. The 2020 audit management letter you got handed this evening. Take it home, read it. We'll go over if anybody has any questions at our next meeting. It's 10 minutes past 9 and we still have other work to finish tonight. So we have it. Now we can take a look at it and we can review it at our next meeting. You'll also note in the packet that you received copies of the signed invoices for the fire command vehicle and the pickup for the highway department. Those were requested by a couple of members. For our information, I know that some of us were not pleased to find that they had been purchased without going through a warrant article. So I was asked to get them. They're here. Do you have any questions about them? We can ask, or you can review them the next meeting.
Nothing we can do about it.
No, there isn't anything we can do about it other than let the powers be that we know that vehicles should go through a warrant article. Even municipal association says that, as does DRA.
I got one quick question. It says
Certainly.
lease. Is it a lease or a purchase with vehicles?
I would have to defer to Walter on that.
Okay. I just want to say, the title says lease retail order for the motor vehicle instead of purchase.
Is that enough?
Yeah. Any other questions on any of that? Okay, Walter, since you're in the hot seat because Jim is so new, is there anything that you should make us aware of, that things that the selectmen are keeping a special eye on or might have concerns about?
Well, certainly the budget, some of the things have already been brought up tonight, and I think it's important that you're aware that, we do have a handle on the budget in terms of our obligations that we have through the end of the fiscal year. Cheryl's prepared what we're calling a kind of a build-out budget. Obviously, there's majority of our expenses are fixed expenses, things like salaries, benefits, utilities, et cetera, are all things that we know historically we're going to have to continue paying through the end of the year. So we've essentially created a budget that shows those expenses already being applied against what we have to work with. And as you mentioned, working with the default budget, which is 3 years old, and the changes that have been made over the past couple of years are really, putting us to the test in terms of being able to make it through the year with, being able to maintain the same services as well as not overspend the bottom line. So I think Jim will attest that we've been talking about, the budget and the expenditures almost at every select board meeting, just making sure that everybody's aware that we're conscious of it and we're managing it. Department heads are been advised that spending is to be what's necessary, and that, if there's something that's can be postponed to next year, or at least delayed until we're later on in the fiscal year, so we know where we are financially, then those decisions should be made. So, it's a challenge, and as I say, we've got mechanics in place to monitor the budget as we head towards the end of the fiscal year. At this point in time, we're looking like it's going to be very close, but we're going to be able to make it. As far as the overall bottom line is concerned, we're definitely going to have departments that are going to be over budget. But again, that's because we're dealing with a 3-year-old budget, and so we're going to to make sure that we work within the total bottom line to bring this home. But it may require some changes in operations in order to get there. So that's the message from administration. I don't know if Cheryl has anything to add, but we're more than happy to share any of those projections with the committee if they would like.
Any questions regarding any of that? Thank you, Walter. Let's see. Where else are we? Okay, so we've gone through the town, gone through the school. Quick review of our operating procedures. This had come up back during our Zoom sessions, that there were some suggestions that,
Madam Chair,
yes,
are we all set that the town staff that's here
oh, absolutely.
may depart at this point?
Yeah, we don't have any further financial questions to ask either Walter or Cheryl, correct? Because we're done with those, we're done with the budgets for this evening. Thank you very much for coming. Both of you, we appreciate it.
Madam Chair, may I also ask for the committee to consider flipping those two internal
Yes.
business
Yeah,
items?
we should do the vacancy
I think the
first.
procedures make it.
Right. Okay. So we'll do the vacancy first. As you guys are all aware, do we want to take a 5-minute break? I'm seeing people walking. Does anybody else need a quick break? Okay. We had 4 vacancies. We had 3 put in any event, we have a vacancy. We have 2 individuals who would like to talk to us about filling that vacancy. So what we have done in the past is ask each of them to tell us why they think, A, they would like to be on the budget committee, and how they can help us.
Can I just add
You may.
that when we realized at the end of the election that we had an open position, we posted that fact appropriately, thank you, Linda, and that we, in response to that vacancy, received 2 letters of interest from Mr. Hadley and Ms. Anderson. I received copies today or yesterday. I received email copies of their
I
letters.
think we all did.
Everybody did quite a while ago.
I just didn't get a chance to read
Oh,
them.
no, I didn't, because we had to wait until the end of the, which was like yesterday. So
yes, we
I
have
have copies of them if
So if anybody wants to
read into the
read a co-
record or
if anybody
whatever.
didn't get one, wants to read one, Linda, very,
Well, I kind of figured that since they're both here, they could speak for themselves,
here's your letter.
rather than read, you can read
But
your letter.
the letters are here if they're wanted.
So you're going to flip a coin, or who's going first? Yeah, it would be helpful, Chairman, just make sure that it's on. That way it'll come through.
Can you hear me?
We can.
When I, excuse me, when I applied for the position, I didn't expect anyone else to apply for it because the job pays so good.
Yeah.
So
Why I'm here.
showing up tonight and finding out that Ms. Anderson, who served on the board for the last 12 months, helped prepare the budget, is much more involved and knowledgeable in the current budget, et cetera. I think she would be a much better fit as far as hitting the ground running. So I serve on the SAU Audit Committee for Northwood, and I report to the SAU committee. And one of the questions you probably should ask the school board is to get a copy of the Stratford standalone budget, Nottingham's standalone budget. Nottingham is going to save $150,000 a year because they're going to convert a large storage room at the Nottingham town offices. And it would be good to see what those two budgets are so that when you meet in the fall for the Northwood standalone budget, July of '22, it'll give you a good example of whether they're following suit or whether they're, as Paul mentioned, having too much staff, et cetera. But I appreciate your service to the town. I just retired from working in Boston and stuff, but I think Ms. Anderson would do an excellent job, and so I would like to formally withdraw my name for consideration.
That's entirely up to you.
Yeah.
You can do that.
No, but what I'll do is I'll put a little letter to the chair on other things at the SAU, because these budgets are available to, to your budget committee and stuff, and I think it would be very helpful. The Nottingham withdrawal report, it's 18 pages, the process they went through. Stratford, the same thing. It was approved by the State Board of Education.
Right.
Stratford was. Nottingham is waiting. 79% approved to, a standalone budget.
Right.
So, but thank you very much.
Hey, position on the school board.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
There's 2 openings on the school board. Now that you're retired,
No. Although I do have
they're done now.
I have a graduate certificate in school business administration.
There you are.
There you go.
And I was certified by the State Board of Education as a certified school business administrator.
So,
But that was a long time ago.
yeah.
Yeah, so will a lot of you.
But I appreciate your service.
Good.
You still want to hear from me?
Of course.
Last person standing. Pam Sanderson, I've been on the zoning board. I was appointed to the Board of Selectmen. I had the pleasure of dealing with the Budget Committee for the past year and trying, like a duck with my little feet underwater, trying to learn as much as I could. Of course, administration at that time, John Scruton had 1 week more in the town than I did on the board. So to come to a budget meeting was a crash course. And I did my best. I worked with Ginger and Hal on doing our little Delta meetings. Trying to keep up with you guys as best I can. The one thing I have going for me is continuity. I've been with you through this past year, which has been a trying year, and I've also seen it from the other side over on the board to see what and how it happened. Plus, I paid for those trucks. It's my joke. But bump.
Yeah.
So essentially, that's why I put in for it. I saw a need and I stepped forward because I think that's what the people of Northwood need to do. And every one of you have stepped forward, and I respect that. So I'm here.
Okay. Do we have any questions of Pam since Jim decided that he wasn't going to stay with us? Thank you, Jim. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was good to hear that he was finally retiring. So, okay, if we don't have any questions, we need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept Pam Sanderson, or to appoint Pam Sanderson to this position on the Budget Committee.
Second.
Okay, who seconded?
Give it to Betty.
Betty, by
By
3/10 of a second.
Right.
It was an Olympic effort.
I was gonna say that, yeah. Okay. Do we have a motion and a second? No questions? I have to ask. Okay, roll call vote. Betsy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah.
Tim?
Yes?
Jim?
Yep.
And I am a yes. So it is unanimous. Yay, welcome back. Yeah, we do need donuts, yeah. Yeah, so just before our next meeting, I don't see Marissa, so get sworn in. Oh, that's true. Yeah, you have to be sworn in. Do we need a handshake? Okay, so. No, we can't yet.
So the election.
Procedures.
Once you run for election, you will.
To review these, rather than going over them tonight.
Amen.
Sound good? All right. Okay, so we're done with the vacancy. The last thing on our list at this point is our committee procedures. These haven't been updated since October of 2015. The last time we updated them, the changes were a result of a subcommittee of us that went over all of them, considered how times have changed, how RSAs have changed, etc., and made recommendations to us. My suggestion, particularly in the interest of time this evening, that we strongly consider a committee and ask for volunteers. Should we agree that a committee would be a good thing to do, so that they can meet and present us with recommendations for our next meeting.
Second.
I didn't make the motion. But if you want to make the motion, so we
I
can
make a
talk
motion,
about
we
it.
have a subcommittee, as spelled out in item number 5, to to review the procedures as they stand and see if there are any changes we think would be appropriate, and make sure the subcommittee's open to any suggestions by individual members of the budget committee, or even the public, for that matter. Amen.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
So, any discussion? Yes? No?
Does some people have some problems with these?
They were things that, and of course, my copy is at home, and I'm older. No, I mean, my copy I had notes on,
Oh, well.
and I
you have
can't
some
remember my
issues.
notes.
Okay.
But at different meetings, and, well, maybe we need to add this, or tweak that, and so I made notes on it, but, like I said, it's sitting on my kitchen table. In its packet, all nice and neat.
Well, I don't mind one way or the other. They seem pretty comprehensive to me, but be interesting to
Yes.
see what the
I would
changes
want
are.
to take a look at is because it comes up constantly that we say we can't hold a meeting because, or the people have to have their stuff into us. But if you read this, the word within means inside. And so if you read that, somebody getting it to you on a Friday before the meeting or a Tuesday night before the meeting is within a week of that meeting. So I think that wording needs to be changed to do what we want it to do.
It used to say 7 days.
Yes. But within, yeah.
But we could
still,
go back, we had a much
Prior
longer,
to 7 days as opposed to within 7 days.
I'll make a note,
Yeah, please.
because I'll volunteer, I was on this last
Yeah.
time, and I'll be happy to do
Tom
it.
was on the committee along with a couple of others that aren't on the budget committee anymore.
Any other volunteers? Well, no, but
Well, we
turn
gotta
into the motion.
We gotta do the motion to determine whether or not we're gonna do it that way. Is there any other discussion about the motion, which is to create a subcommittee for review of our committee procedures? Okay. Seeing none, let's take a vote. Betsy? Tom?
Yes.
Well, I kind of figured that, but I have to ask you. Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Betty?
yes,
Paul? Ted?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mike Joben?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And yes. So, it is unanimous. 0. Okay, so we are going to have the subcommittee. Any volunteers to join Tom? Is it you and me, kid, again?
You and me? Betsy, you want to do this again?
Yeah, Betsy, you want to join in?
Yes, I did it last time, I'm interested.
Okay. So we have Betsy, Tom, and myself.
Great.
That work for everybody?
I think Linda, as always, will be
Oh,
a
Linda's always been,
resource to the committee, because
right.
what do we do without her?
we can make sure it's all
I'm sorry?
statutorily correct.
Correct. We count on Linda to make sure that it's statutorily correct.
Right, otherwise.
So is anyone else interested in, as long as we don't go over our quorum, you can have a subcommittee of any size, if I recall. So if anyone else wants to come and play,
We'll try and let you know when we're going to meet, so you
Yes.
can, you know.
oh yeah,
You're
because
not
we have to
doing
post
anything.
it.
You have to post it.
We have to post it, we have to
Yeah,
post
post
it.
it.
Yeah, you're doing the minutes.
Does the full committee want to know every time they meet? Imagine it might only be once, but
Well, I think
we should.
I think we can certainly send out an email letting everybody know when we're meeting and just so you know that we're doing it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing which we didn't mention, which I'll mention in closing, I
Yeah.
promise, in closing,
Oh,
is
yes,
that Cheryl, thank you, prepared a glossary of terms because we kept using the word surplus
As an example.
as an example of misuse of a unassigned, formerly known as surplus. And so we said, well, what else are we misusing? Or what's a better definition of? So she prepared this glossary of terms. And if any of you see phrase or financial term that you think we should define and add to this, please let us know.
Right.
This, I hope, is very clarifying in some ways about what a surplus really is or isn't.
And I had occasion to speak with Northwood's representative at DRA, and that was one question that I did ask about. And it says, we've always referred to it as a surplus, but that's not what our town administrator and finance person are saying. And she started laughing, and she said, yeah, 20 years ago it was surplus. She says it's been changed 4 times since then.
That's exactly right.
So,
And it's still surplus.
right. We still think of it as surplus, but in the course of our discussions, we need to use the appropriate terms. So these are here for your benefit so that you can become accustomed to the appropriate term. Okay. I think we're good. As far as our next meeting date, we'll get Linda and Tom and I will figure out when is an appropriate time and send an email and, you know, this date or this date and see what works for everybody, because I didn't have a chance to meet with Linda to find out.
Tentatively, we're looking
When
at
are next
sometime in
week?
October, right?
It would be sometime after, my guess is third or perhaps last week of October, only to allow enough time for end of month figures to be printed off and mailed to us. 'Cause
So
everything
we're
is-
not actually setting the date?
We're not
now?
setting a date right now because we don't know what else is happening. And perhaps you and I can get together in the next week or two and no, we're not going to get together in the next week or two. Well, I can't next week. Evidently you can't the week after.
Correct.
There you go. We will get together and let you guys know what it's looking like for our next date. That being said, do I have a motion?
Yes, ma'am, you do.
I have a motion to adjourn. Okay, Mr. Chad, anybody second? Betty did. I thought I heard her voice. Okay, I'm assuming no discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Wait a minute, I have to do the roll call, right?
Yes, you do.
Hold on, guys.
I got you.
I got electricity at the house at 7, so.
Guys, I have to do a roll call to adjourn because we've got the electronic thing.
Madam
So,
Chair, it might be
saying
easier
yes,
just
but
to
my
go
vote
by
is
the
in the
name
toilet.
things around the...
yeah, I'll do that. Michael,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes, feed my blood.
Ted,
Yes.
Betsy,
Yes.
Tim, Tom,
Yes.
Bob, yes, thank you. I'm blank. Bob. Yep. And yes, okay, we are adjourned, folks, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.